My name is Jeff Fritz. I am a program manager on the .NET team. I specialize in building content, building training materials. I manage a bunch of live video resources out there, including the upcoming .NET Conf event in November, where we're going to be announcing, showing off .NET 10 and all the cool stuff that's coming with .NET 10. I'm also on part of the .NET Aspire team, helping to develop and steer going forward where that framework, where that set of tools is going. Now, this session, Building Confident Application Systems with .NET Aspire, is intended to show you a little bit of the fast-forward process to take your existing application system and get it into Aspire. Dare I say, aspirify it. Because that's a verb now. We want to aspirify all the things. And I hope what you see as we go through this is that adding Aspire to an application system, is not something that is intimidating. It's not something that's going to require you to do a whole bunch of upgrades. But what it is going to do is enable you to deliver so much more value inside of your applications. Let me show you, let me get into this a little bit, and we'll talk about things. Modern .NET apps, we know, are complex realities. There is so much going on inside your applications now because we know you're using microservices. You're building APIs. You've got background workers. You've got service buses and queues and various databases in read-only states and read-write states. And you have all this massive interconnected structure that makes up your application systems. And I don't like to use the word distributed application because that kind of hints at you need to be on the cloud to do this. No, these are application systems, right? And that's what we called them going back into client-server days, right? And I'm not seeing anybody nodding that, and okay, a couple folks smiling, yes, I know what client-server is. I'm that old. But now we have demands when we deploy out to cloud-native locations. We want resilience in our applications. We want to be able to observe what's going on inside of our applications. And quite frankly, and admit it, I know all of you do this. You hate building logging, right? You hate building tracing and performance metrics, right? That's a pain in the neck. You'd rather be building those cool user interfaces, the cool interactions that deliver customer value. What Skippy over in operations is looking at regarding the application, Skippy can wait. He's not the one who's paying the bills here, right? It's the customers. We want to make sure that we can support that complexity that our customers need and the logging and tracing and performance metrics that Skippy needs. We can get to that later, right? We've got developer operational challenges. You've got operational tasks that you need to manage alongside coding. You need to be able to scale and manage all the network connectivity between containers that are running in your application system. And it's a pain in the neck. This is a whole collection of stuff here that you don't want to manage and you don't want to find the skill set to learn to manage because it's a lot. So .NET Aspire is that distributed application stack that's going to help you build and streamline your building of complex application systems with opinionated choices. We're going to give you a great set of choices, of starting points that are going to enable you to build and develop and even enable Skippy and operations to be able to get the information that they need. You're going to get built-in orchestration and diagnostics along with service discovery because nobody likes managing all the little connection strings between your microservices in the various applications that are running around in your system. We want .NET Aspire to be developer first. We know that if we can make you faster, if we can enable you to be more productive, then you're going to be able to deliver better production reliability, and it's going to make your application system more reliable, more robust, and it's going to make you more productive. You're going to be able to do so much more with that. So .NET Aspire has these 6 tenets that we stick by, and you're going to see all of these today. We want to give you smart defaults in your applications so that by default, it's setting up things that make sense and deliver capabilities like open telemetry. So you have standard logging and metrics that get reported and sent out to wherever Skippy and their team in operations wants to be able to read and manage your application system. We're going to give you orchestration capabilities. Kubernetes is nice and pushing around containers is really cool, but you know what? YAML is hard. So let's give you capabilities to manage and orchestrate and bring in resources as you need it in a way that you as a .NET developer are familiar with. We're going to give you integrations that are going to allow you to spin up those other systems that you rely on. You want to be able to work with the Redis cache? We got you. You want to be able to work with a Postgres database or a SQL Server database? Done. RabbitMQ? Absolutely. You want to work with Azure Foundry locally so you can test things out before you deploy it out to Azure OpenAI or connect out to another AI service? Cool. We've got all those features enabled that you can start up and run with 2 lines of code on your desktop. We're going to give you this phenomenal developer dashboard that gives you insight into the entire application system. You're going to see a lot more of that as we go through this. Service discovery, I mentioned, we're going to eliminate managing all those connection strings and endpoint management so that your various APIs and resources point to each other and know where those things are. We're going to make that drop dead simple for you. And last, the big one that a lot of folks ask about, hey, this is a series of developer tools. How do I turn that into something real? I want to deploy. How do I do that? How do I deploy? How do I get this out to my production space? We'll go through and show you how to deploy, how to set up continuous integration, and get you ready for success. All right. Let's start off. I have all the source code available. It's on GitHub. You're going to be able to go out there and find it. I have it in this folder right now called Aspire Dev to Deploy. Let me copy out the start point here. That's weird. I'm going to say start. All right. And I'm just going to place this down over here inside of a new folder, and I'll just call this VS Live. Just so I've got a starting point that we can jump in at. And this being VS Live, I'm going to use Visual Studio to go through and work on this. We'll bounce over to Visual Studio Code a little bit, but we'll start here in VS Live. All right. I have this project that delivers a website that uses the National Weather Service to present data. This is my kind of rub on the default templates that we have inside Visual Studio that give you that fake. Why am I not getting any of my hotkeys popping up here? That give you that fake weather forecast here. We're going to go in and actually create a weather forecast that is a real weather forecast. So this is a series of 2 projects. I have an API that knows how to go and connect out to the National Weather Service. Here it is. And it will go out to the National Weather Service at apiweather.gov and get a bunch of weather stations and return that as an API that my Blazor application called My Weather Hub knows how to launch and interact with. Now, building these 2 pieces, right, they're 2 separate projects, and I have a connection string sitting inside of app settings that tells my weather front-end website how to go find the API, and it's at localhost 5271. And if I was working with this normally, I have to start the API service. I could do that with .NET Run. And then I have to start the website, and I have to manage these 2 projects, kind of finding and connecting to each other. And working with that locally, it introduces a bunch of inadvertent problems that we could run into, right? If I have to restart the API service and I don't coordinate the restart of the website, I could get things out of sync. So, right, I can do things inside Visual Studio, like set up, startup projects, and say, you know what, I want multiple startup projects go ahead and start both of these. And yeah, go ahead and do that. Thank you so much. And when I start that now it'll coordinate and launch the two at the same time. And that's great for me inside Visual Studio. Sure, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. And it's going to start up, and I get two console windows for the logs for the two applications, and I'm going to get two browser windows. One that's my API, and I'm using Open API here to present that. And over here is my front end that I'm working with. And Visual Studio is, thank you. So I can find now the list of zones, my weather forecast stations that the National Weather Service makes available to me. And I can click through and get a weather report. Let me go search for my favorite, Philadelphia, my hometown. And I can quickly get that real weather report right here on my screen. Now, that's nice. That's a good starting point, and that works out nicely. But as I want to grow my application here and bring in .NET Aspire, having to coordinate those two applications is dicey. And I've got these pair of console windows here. If I need to debug anything, I've got to kind of look back and forth in there, and I start to feel like Cypher from the Matrix. You know what I mean? Right? Okay, you got that reference, right? There's just text flying by as stuff's going on, and I've got to discern it and figure it out. That's problematic, right? There's a potential for issues there. I could miss something. I want to be able to do this a little bit better and get some more value out of this. So let me introduce .NET Aspire into and wrapping this initial system of just these two projects and start creating some value there, okay? And get rid of some of that connection string information that I've got buried inside of my app settings here, right? That's kind of annoying and silly to have to put that there when I know the API is sitting right next to me here. So let me go and introduce that. I'm going to go into Solution Explorer here, right click, and I am going to say Add New Project, and I'm going to start off specifying I want my Aspire service defaults. Thank you. And service defaults is going to bring in some of those initial features and tenets that I was talking about. It's going to bring in capabilities for both of our systems so that we can set up open telemetry, right? That's a logging and tracing and metrics reporting standard that lets us push information to a whole bunch of locations. We can send stuff to not just Azure App Insights or Azure Monitor. We can send stuff to services like Datadog and SolarWinds, and even push data into a Prometheus data store and present that with a Grafana dashboard. You've got lots of options when you use an open standard like OpenTelemetry. So we're going to take your iLogger capabilities that you've already built. You're already using in ASP.NET Core. And we're going to take that and turbocharge it. So instead of sending it to the console or into Serilog somewhere, we're going to publish it to OpenTelemetry to wherever you want to deliver it. There's documentation that'll show you how to publish the telemetry to other places. We're going to get this publishing to the .NET Aspire dashboard in this session. I'm going to add default health checks because Skippy in operations wants to know if your website and your API are healthy. They've got services set up so that they can monitor your applications and tell if they're running. Now, if all they're doing is just going to the front end of the website and making sure they get a 200 response, okay, your site is running, but what if we need to go just under the surface and make sure your site can get to database, can get to different services that are out there, connect to its APIs? Health checks will help you enable those additional checks so that more than just the website's responding, but it's responding and it can do its primary tasks. We're going to add service discovery. That's the first one that I really want to get into here. Service discovery is what's going to help us eliminate connection strings. It's going to help us eliminate passing around those locations of our various services here. And then we're going to set up some HTTP client defaults for resilience handling. So when you deploy an API update, right, there's going to be a blip, right? Maybe a second or two where the API goes offline and there's a cut over from version 1 to version 2, right? Everybody sees just that little blip. And many of us will do things to try and bleed off services and users from version 1 to version 2. Well, what this will do is if it has a problem connecting to something with its HTTP client, it's going to automatically retry. Not even throw back an error, but it's automatically going to build the retry in for you using a library called Poly. So all of those retry capabilities that you've been wrapping HTTP clients with, we've got it built in and it's set up by default right here. And I can activate and pass these capabilities into my applications by just calling add service defaults. So let me add references to the service defaults project into the website and into the API by just grabbing the service defaults project and dragging it in Solution Explorer over those other nodes. So when I go into program down here for the website, right up top here, I can say builder add service defaults. Done. I want to set up the health checks also. So I'm going to go down here and set up app.map default endpoints. And that'll set up health checks capabilities. I'm going to do the same thing over in the API project right here. So I have add open API, add these things. Before we get into any of it, builder add service defaults. This is the set it and forget it of .NET Aspire. And I'll do map default endpoints. Okay. So now I've got those initial capabilities set up and it will do retries, it'll do logging for me. But what I really want to get rid of is this thing right here. Having the one service to have hard-coded, here's where the other location is. That's annoying, and that's something that I'm going to need to keep track of when I go to deploy and a bunch of other things. So let's get rid of that. We can use our service discovery capabilities to get that information. And I'm going to light up and orchestrate these two projects by bringing in a .NET Aspire app host. So I'll just right click and we'll choose add new project. And inside here, I'm going to go look for app host. And it's the .NET Aspire app host. I'll just call this app host and I'll make sure that I'm using .NET 9 and .NET Aspire 9.4. .NET Aspire 9.4 is the version that was released just last week. So it is fresh bits, just like grandma used to bake, okay? You're gonna get all the coolest features. We've got a great blog post out there and a series of videos that'll show you what's new in .NET Aspire 9.4. And I might show you one or two things along the way here. Spoilers, all right? So I've got my app host project out here. The app host is our orchestrator that will connect the two projects, allow us to manage the two projects and set up and connect references between them. It'll orchestrate and launch all of them at the same time for me. So in order for app host to know about those projects, I'm going to add references for the website to the app host. So app host now knows about the website, it's right there. And I'm going to add the API to app host as well. And you see it adds the project reference there. You can do this at the command line with .NET add reference space project name, right? So in my app host CS here, now I can start to define my projects so that it orchestrates. And as .NET developers, this is now where I feel really comfortable. I get to write C#. I don't have to worry about YAML and spaces lining up my code properly. What do you think, I'm writing Fortran? Come on now. I can type this and put in just the things I need, get IntelliSense capabilities, even get Copilot helping me build and reference the things that I want. Let's define the API first. So the API, and I'm going to say builder, add project, and I've got a generic here that I can use to reference my projects. And check this out. I say projects dot, and IntelliSense is telling me I know about these 3 projects. I know about AppHost. I'm not managing AppHost. I want to manage the API. Finally, inside parentheses here, I can give the API service a name. Not quite a host name, but a name that we can use to reference this resource. So I'll just call it API. And I'll be able to use API as kind of a pseudo host name elsewhere in my application. Let me define the website. Oh, so good. But that's not what I want to call it. I want to call it website. But Copilot generated that for me. The website is where everybody on the outside of my application system connects. So I want to make sure that we configure that with external HTTP endpoints so folks outside my system are able to access this. Additionally, we know that I want to reference the API from inside my website, and we know we have this order of operations where the API needs to start first before the website can connect, because the website really depends on the API to get all of its data. So I can add that preference and say, wait for the API. So now in what? 6 lines of C#, I've defined my 2 projects, how they connect to each other, how they start, the order of operations, and because it's here inside the AppHost project, I can set up and use the AppHost as my single entry point to start my application. So let me start this now, and we'll take a look at the .NET Aspire dashboard and how it's managing these 2 resources. I have one console that opens up, and it's going to give me a login to dashboard address right there. And over here, it opens up the .NET Aspire dashboard. Let's go to light mode so you can see it back there. And now we see it's got 2 services, 2 resources it's managing, API and website, just like I named them in the strings inside of AppHost. API and website, right? Those are resource names, and they appear as the names of these resources over here. I have the URLs for the 2 services. I can certainly click in and see my OpenAPI definition, or click in over here, and my website, it doesn't know how to find the API yet. It's not, I removed that configuration, so it doesn't know how to find that. So let's use the service discovery capabilities of .NET Aspire to tell it, you're going to go get not from your configuration, but you're going to get and route this to the API, because this is where it starts to get interesting for you as developers. I don't want to have to remember the location and the port number, right? Because port numbers, dear Lord, that's a pain in the neck to manage. I know I want to connect to an HTTPS endpoint, preferably, but I'll take HTTP also. Fail over to that. No, I don't want that. I want to just go to API. I don't know where the API is. I don't care where it is, but connect to the API, and you, .NET Aspire, go figure that out for me, okay? I'll restart one more time, and I'll show you how .NET Aspire stitches this together, because all the things .NET Aspire is doing, you've already been able to do. We just put it in a nice, tightly wrapped package that's opinionated and going to give you great access to be able to do those things so much easier. And now my website works. It finds the API and presents information, and I can get my weather reports. Let's pull back the covers just a little bit. I created that reference between the 2, and it passes that information in. I click the kebab menu there next to website. And if I scroll down here, you'll see it passes in a series of environment variables. And if I scroll down further, you can see all the OpenTelemetry configuration being passed in. But then we have this services bit right down here. Services API, and there's an HTTP and an HTTPS. And if I click into this, you'll see it's that HTTP endpoint. All that we're doing is passing in the address that the API uses and defines right here. You know, I was pulling from configuration. It was an app settings file on disk, but I can pass in environment variables and do pretty much the same thing. By just referring to the service API, .NET Aspire is helping me convert API into these addresses. So I can, as I move forward into other environments, I can maintain those environment variables, and my application will know how to discover and route appropriately when I use in my code hard-coded locations that say, go connect to the API. Make sense? All right, let's continue here. So we've got the distributed application builder going and making connection there, and that's nice. But I also mentioned that there's telemetry and other information that it's capturing and presenting. Oh, and our consoles are still out there. We can see them over here, right? I'll do that again. On the Resources tab, there's a little console log button down here. I'll click into that, and I still get to see that same console that was running right there on the metal, right, inside of a terminal for us on my machine. This all works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. All of this is open source. We've got lots of great contributors helping out with these capabilities across the ecosystem. We'll see more of that in a little bit. There's structured logging in here, so I can see all of my requests and interactions as a series of structured logs. I can even see, look, it made a request out to the weather website to return data. And I've got distributed traces that are built for me. I didn't write anything. It added this for me, okay? By default, you get this distributed view that shows you everything going on in your application. No code added. All I did was say add service defaults, and I got this. That's pretty cool, right? 2 lines of code I added to my weather website, and I got this popping out. I also get metrics that are being reported. So this is being added by default with that add OpenTelemetry statement, and I can see graphs that are being managed and delivered that show here's the performance of things, right? I can go over to my API and I can see the outbound HTTP client requests, and I can see how long those requests are taking to actually connect out to the National Weather Service's weather website. All right? All of that added, no extra code. That's phenomenal. But there's more. Let me move into my next demo here and start talking about how we can detect and work with things as they break. Okay? So I've very much got here on the dashboard these 2 services that connect to each other. And when I go look at my code, I have this, go ahead and stop that. I have this API up here with an NWS manager, National Weather Service Manager, that sets up the connections over here so that it goes out to API Weather Gov, and when it needs to get forecast for a location, there's the code to do that. You'll be able to explore this code when I give you the sample code URL at the end of the session. And the list of zones, the weather stations, are up here. It goes to /zones. But if there's a typo in here and I make a mistake, you know what? I want to go to API Weather Com, not API Weather Gov. And I go start the service here. This is going to come up, and when it goes to start connecting and getting me data, well, now I'm getting errors. And if I didn't have a debugger attached, right, I wouldn't see a debugger throwing messages and giving me this trace information. So as this finished, yes, I know. We do your thing, finish it. Thanks so much, right? So I've got these errors coming out, and what do? Right, and there they are. It retried, right? I told you about how it's gonna retry if there's an error. And when I look into this, 401 unauthorized, what do? How do I diagnose this, right? I've clearly forced an error here, but it's weird. How do I know what to work with on this? Because look at all these errors I've got. GitHub Copilot is installed and on the .NET Aspire dashboard to help you when errors come up and you want to diagnose them. If you have if you're running Visual Studio and you debug start your Aspire system, or if you're in Visual Studio Code and you start debugging your Aspire system from there with C# Dev Kit installed, you'll be able to click this Explain Trace, and it will open up, look at the logs that you just created, and give you some information here about, here's what went wrong, here's some insights, let me do some analysis, and give you that extra information. Well, I was trying to go here and I got a 401 unauthorized, so this exception happened, and so on and so forth. The API can't authenticate to this location, and consequently we get a 500 internal server error. So there's some log entries, it's gonna go through here, check the API credentials, and as I'm going through this, I should recognize that that's supposed to be API weather gov, right? And further, I could say here, I don't need to authenticate to the National Weather Service. Why is this government website not working? Right? And GPT-4.1 down here is going to look at it and say, well, wait a sec. You tried to go to API weather com, not at NWS endpoint. You should be going to API weather gov. So instead of just fixing this and changing that text in the one place over here inside of my NWS manager, where I set up right here, I can take that and make that into an external resource so that we monitor that connection that goes out to the US government National Weather Service website. So let me dig in and show you how we can add that. We recently added this capability to refer to external resources. So I'm going to add, I'll call this NWS, and I will specify builder add external service, and I will call this NWS, National Weather Service, and it's not API weather com. We know we made that mistake. It is API weather gov. And just like I set up the reference here between the website and the API, I can pass a reference to that location into my API by saying with reference and pass in the C# variable NWS. So now when I go over to my NWS manager, I can reference the NWS service and change this to just NWS. Now, okay, Fritz, you moved the connection string, the location, the URL from inside my code to over here outside as this resource that's being managed. Big deal. Yeah, big deal. In this example, it's very contrived, right? And there it's showing me up at the top, the National Weather Service and where it connects out to. And when I connect in and use my application, it works the exact same way and shows me my results. But what happens when you're working with that service that the accounting team is building, right? Or the product management team is building, and they're making changes, they're working on something, and instead of going to the service over there on accounting 1, you need to go and test out on the service over here, accounting 2. Well, you could go through your application and find all those endpoints and swap out that text. Or you can go into your configuration in your dashboard and change the URL in one place, and everywhere in your application system that you're going to API, you're going to the accounting service, it will get rewritten and rerouted to the other location. Cool. And now also I've got 3 objects in my application system, so my collection of dependencies is starting to get more complex. This table view is going to start to become inadequate as we add more features. That's why we added a graph. This is a graph that's being managed for you by .NET Aspire that's going to grow and change and show you all the resources that are managed inside your application. So I've got my website that references the API, and the API connects out to the National Weather Service, and you see down there API Weather Gov is displayed in the box. When I look at my trace, I can now see clearly here the website made a request to the API and made a request to the National Weather Service, and I get that full picture here. I made a request from the website to the API to the National Weather Service. Where that URL is that the National Weather Service is answering on, this trace doesn't care. That resolution is somewhere else. That's fine. I don't need to see that. I can dig into the logs for this and see that exact information. Cool, right? That's a nice way to kind of wrap this up and be able to see more that's going on. But I can add a couple other features here. I'm keeping an eye on my time. Let me add a package that will let me manage and provide an additional health check to make sure my API can get to the National Weather Service website. So I'll go in here and I'll go into my API and I'm going to add a NuGet package. I'm going to browse out here and go grab ASP.NET Core Health Checks URIs. Come on. I know you got this here. Apply that. Yes, I accept. You may have my firstborn. What? All right. So now, inside the program settings for my API, right? And down here, where is it? Right, it sets up the NWS manager up in here. I can add some extra code that will add this health check for the National Weather Service. Now I have that already scripted and written down off screen here. I'm just going to copy it in so that you don't have to watch me type. So I'm going to go and say add health checks. We're going to make a connection and verify that we can get to a URL, and it's the NWS. We'll call it the NWS Weather API, and if you can't get there, we're unhealthy. The API is not healthy. Also, the National Weather Service requires us to provide a user agent, so I'm specifying just a friendly user agent that shows we're giving a demo. Finally, I'm going to add an entry here on the API. I'm going to add an entry that says with HTTPS health check, and I'm going to say you can go check at /health, right? Oh, you don't like that, do you? That's fine. I'm going to let that ride anyway, because I like living dangerously. Go ahead and start that. And we'll get our dashboard coming up here. There we go. And it's going to go and check. Did you see how it showed me an unhealthy status there? It was doing the health check and it's reporting healthy. And inside my health checks, you can see, let me open that up, that it's making this additional HTTPS check going out to the health website, the health of that site. So if I change the external location here and I break that again, right? I'll restart this. Did I click the right restart? I clicked the wrong one. Restart it. That health check is now going to safeguard me and show that I wasn't able to connect. I'm not in a healthy state. And if I view the details here, I've got this additional check that's showing, hey, that endpoint is not responding with a 200. And I can dig in and find the errors appropriately that I need to work out with that. So adding this extra health check here makes it a little bit cleaner and easier to discover and work with that. I'm going to comment that out for the rest of the demo here. So we've added health checks. We've been able to get more insight into our application running properly. We set up this discovery so that we know when we're getting where to discover and connect out to the National Weather Service. And we've made it easier to abstract away and route to other APIs if we wanted to. Well, that's great. But when I go and interact with my website here, go ahead and restart it one more time. It's a little bit slow making that request out to the weather website each time to get data, right? And let's face it, the National Weather Service, by their rate limiting declarations, they tell us that they don't actually publish updates, but once every 15 minutes. So really, go find another one. Go find another one that I haven't hit here in a little bit, right? There we go. And we'll look at the trace coming through. So it's doing a retry. Yeah. And that one, come on. Yeah, there we go. There, it finished. It's retrying. Come on. We did this right. And sometimes some of these weather stations go offline. Go back to the traces. Right, I see it make that request, and that's great that it responds in 16 milliseconds, but I don't want to have to go and hit the National Weather Service every time that I make a request. That's not being a good internet citizen, right? If I know it only updates once every 15 minutes, I can cache some of that information. Now, I've built in capabilities for it to use the in-memory output caching. That's something that we can do by default with our ASP.NET systems, but we can do better. Let's bring in Redis, because if we need to scale up the number of APIs we have to service all the fans we have that are connecting to our awesome website that's designed and built in developer black and white, then we need to be able to handle and not put additional pressure on the National Weather Service. So let's add Redis as a caching mechanism into our application. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to choose Add .NET Aspire package on my app host. And I can see right up here at the top, I have Aspire hosting Redis. I'm going to download that and get that added to my application. And I'm also going to make sure that I have Docker running, because this is going to run Redis inside of a Docker container locally for me. If you have Podman instead of Docker, it'll discover and run on Podman as well. So I've installed my Redis integration, we call it out here, and I can now define Redis inside my app host for it to be able to use and connect to. So I'll use the same type of definition here, and I'll say add Redis, and I'm just going to call this cache, right? So I've got a C# variable called Redis that knows how to create a Redis resource, and the service name is cache. I want to use that service inside my API. So I do the exact same syntax I did previously with reference, and we're going to reference Redis, and let's also make sure that we wait for Redis to start. Okay? Finally, I'm going to go and add a output caching library from our friends at Stack Exchange to the API so that it knows how to use Redis for output caching. So I'll just search for Aspire Stack Exchange Redis output caching. So this is the Stack Exchange Redis output caching library that you might already be using in your ASP.NET applications right now. But we put an Aspire wrapper around it. Why? Because we want to give you logging, tracing, and we want to give you performance information as well as health check information coming back from that. So we've given you this opinionated wrapper package that does all of those things that you don't want to write. We did it for you. It's in the package. Instead of asking for this package, ask for the Aspire package and you get those features. Phenomenal. So in my NWS manager over here, there is an entry where it sets up the output caching. There it is. I'm going to remove the default in-memory output caching and go back over to, I've got two program CSs up here. What am I doing? Here we go, API program, and I'm going to create a connection to Redis. And my Redis is sitting out there, and it's called, the resource is called cache. So I can do builder, add Redis output cache, and the name of that resource is cache. Done. I don't have to write any other code. All of my other output caching code that's out there works the exact same way. I wrote 2 lines of code. I added 2 NuGet packages, and now it's going to connect out, and my API is going to work with a Redis cache that's out there, putting the output that it receives for those weather API requests inside Redis. So there you see my cache resource, and you see the source is a container. I don't have to set up Docker run. I don't have to set up Docker compose files. I don't have to set up a kubectl file. All I wrote was 1 line of C# in the app host file, and it started and wired that up for me. My API here, when I look at the details, we saw the API was passed in as an environment variable. Redis is passed in as a connection string right there as an environment variable. I don't need to learn the password that Redis defines for me. It's generated and passed in by default. I don't care. And the port that it's listening on, I don't care either. API, go use this thing. None of this stuff matters to me. I get to put that behind me, and that management is something I don't need to worry about because Aspire does it for me. Continuing here, so now if I go and use the application and we interact, right? I'll click through the first 3, and now you'll see it comes back much quicker. If we look at the trace, check this out. Now, it's going and getting the forecast for a zone. It's checking to see if we have the data in Redis, doesn't find it, goes and gets it from the National Weather Service and saves it in Redis. 1.5 milliseconds. Yeah, that's a little bit of a performance bump, right? So when I look at my last request here, it never hits the National Weather Service. It goes right to Redis and brings back my data. But what does that data look like, right? There's a bunch of tools and things, and there's maybe an extension I can install in Visual Studio to let me browse Redis, right? We got you covered there too. 1 line of code. And you can add Redis Insight. So I'll go back to app host. Check this out with Redis Insight. You can run Redis Commander if you'd want. I like Redis Insight because it's going to give you a lot easier to use user interface that for me as a SQL Server person, I can click around there really easy. So there's my Redis Insight. I can click into there and see that it hasn't started yet. Thank you. And it's already configured a connection to my cache. I'll click into there and I'll be able to see the contents of my cache as it populates. So I'll click through a couple of these, go back over to Redis Insight, refresh, and there's my output cache. I can see the collection of zones. The data that came back from the National Weather Service is output cached here, so that when the next time I go to my weather website and launch this, it's pulling this information. And I can see the output cache that's written for all of these other locations. So I can come through, and if I want to make sure that things work properly and flush the cache, I can just delete these keys right here in Redis Insight. Fantastic. I don't have to install anything. I wrote 1 line of code. I got another application that I can use here on my dashboard. Awesome stuff. Love seeing these capabilities that give me extra features with no effort. Am I right? But our application system is getting more complex. And we can go look at our graph now. And now we're starting to see complexity growing, right? Just our website and our API, well, the API knows how to go out to the National Weather Service, and it knows how to connect to a cache. And there's a Redis Insight feature that knows how to connect to the cache. Redis Insight doesn't know about any of these other things. It's managing and growing my network diagram for me. I've had developers tell me that they love this feature so much, they do the print to PDF feature inside the browser, take that, put it inside of a document that they hand over to their IT director so that they know, here's all the features that make up that application system that we have in production, and you can clearly see everything. And because it's managed for us, they can just print off another document whenever there's a change. Fantastic. Less work for you to do and an opinionated, easy way to get the data you need. All right, let's do something a little crazy, right? Let's go a little nuts here. And I'm actually gonna, because of the amount of time I have left, I'm gonna go to my save point to show you this. We've got our weather service out here, right? And it shows some of the weather. And let me go to, you know what? I'm not going to go to Philadelphia. Let's go to Manhattan. And we'll bring up the weather for New York, right? And the folks there that are fans of the Yankees and Mets, they have this weather forecast. It's partly cloudy and hazy. And you know what? This is kind of boring, right? It's developer black and white. It'd be cool if we could bring a little bit of splash of color, some imagery in here to kind of hint at the weather for that region. Am I right? So this is the part marketing wants me to do. Let's add some AI into this. You knew it was coming. Let's add some AI into this, and you don't need to set up and register a service out there. We're going to get you a free model that you can use on GitHub to add into your application system that will allow you to interact and try out working with some of the great models that are available out there on GitHub. Now, you'll be able to swap this out later when you want to grow your application, do a bunch more with AI and interact with Azure OpenAI so you have a enterprise-grade AI solution that's out there that you can connect to. But as a developer, connecting into little free GitHub models to test with works out nicely. You can also connect and use services that run locally. We have plugins for .NET Aspire that will allow you to run Ollama, so you can connect into Ollama managed models. And we have facilities that let you run Azure Foundry local, so you can connect into models that are managed by Azure Foundry. In both cases, you're going to want, for your testing purposes, using Ollama or Azure Foundry, you're going to want to have a pretty good GPU or processor to be able to drive those things. So if you're like me and you're on a little ARM laptop in the middle of a conference center, using those GitHub models and deferring out to the cloud for free, it's a great solution. So let me go over, I have code that's already saved in a save point here. I'm going to open and use that. And this time let's use Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go into, let me make sure I know which one this is. This is demo 4. And we're going to open and use Visual Studio Code for this one. All right. There we go. Bring this one over here. So, and you can see I used a little bit of Copilot to help me out with this. So this solution has inside of app host, right? So look at all the things here. We'll go to Solution Explorer so you can see it. Inside of app host, I have, right? I don't want to, I'm looking for app host CS proj. There it is. I've added a package, Aspire Hosting GitHub Models. We just introduced this integration with .NET Aspire 9.4. It's marked as a preview, but that's okay. It's going to get you in and get you working with the GitHub models from the get-go here. I'll go over to the app host CS, and I'll show you that we added the GitHub model right here with a command add GitHub model. I'm calling that resource AI-model, and I'm telling it we're going to use the GPT-4o mini model. There's a bunch of different models that are available for you out there. Go ahead and check them out on GitHub under the GitHub models pages out there. Do a search for GitHub models and it'll pop right up. Make sure you do the search on Bing, because Bing. I got to get paid, man. All right. So now, just like I did with the other resources, I pass that AI model that I put as the C# variable AI, I pass it in as a reference to my website as with reference AI. Inside my website, I wrote a little block of code called the forecast summarizer that is going to take in a standard Microsoft Extensions AI chat client. This is an interface that abstracts away the chat client interface that you might use to connect out to GPT or Gemini or Claude. We wrap it up as one interface that you can use, and behind the scenes, we route to their APIs appropriately, right? So just like Entity Framework gives you a way to abstractly use the exact same commands to work with different databases, whether it's Postgres or SQL Server, this lets you do the same thing and give you that layer of abstraction so you don't have to know all the nitty-gritty of the underlying APIs. So I've got some code in here and I've added some custom metrics that work with OpenTelemetry so that we can get some additional logging and some performance metrics logged for how we interact with the AI. And down here, there's my prompt. You are a weather assistant. Summarize the following forecast as one of the following conditions. And I gave 4 conditions. Now, this is the part of the demo where I tell you I'm asking the AI for something, and the AI is non-deterministic. As developers, we're used to, when you do select star from users in the database table, you get all the users. But with the AI, you might not get all the users. You might get some extra information. When I wrote this prompt initially, I can't tell you how angry I got at the AI. Because even though I told it twice in this prompt, you're going to report sunny, cloudy, rainy, or snowy, wouldn't you know that son of a gun came back and added clear? Clear? Where did you get clear? I wanted those 4, and it comes back and adds clear. The point is, be ready to respond to the AI doing a little bit extra, okay? So you can take a look at this source code and see how exactly I go through here, how I go and connect out and enable additional telemetry for working with the AI. To get those libraries working so that it knows how to connect to the GitHub models, I've added the Aspire Azure AI Inference library. Once again, this wraps the connections that go out and work with the GitHub models with all the Aspire goodies. And then I've got my extensions AI features here so that I get that iChat client that knows how to connect to GitHub. Finally, of course, we have to put an entry into Program CS to wire that up, and it's 1 line of code. There I'm registering my forecast summarizer. But additionally, there it is, add Azure Chat Completions Client AI-model. And then I say add chat client after that, so it registers the iChat client abstract interface for me to connect into. Okay. On the home page, there's a little bit of fun stuff here where it injects that forecast summarizer that's kind of a facade for interacting with the AI. And down here, it has a wrap on the selected zone and sets a background image. Let me get this started and show you what happens with this. So I'll go into app host and we will .NET watch. And I'm showing you this at the command line so that you know this works at the command line whether you're on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So we'll go and launch this. Oh, look at that. I am right on time. So here's all the resources starting up. And what are we waiting on here? There it goes. So that's running, starting that. And now if I go into my website and let's go look for Philadelphia, click into that. And now I get a cool background for some reason with the St. Louis Arch. But hey, it worked. So there's a series of things that happened here. And .NET Aspire is going to show me how those all work together. So let's take a look at the trace. And there's my get that returns the information. Right? Why isn't it showing me the fetch? I know why it's not. We'll get into that in a little bit here. Yeah, there we go. So it's getting and saving that information. And down here, I can see it goes and makes the request to the AI model. I added extra bits of logging, and you can dive into the logging messages in the source code when you get that at the end of the session here. But I added this extra logging so that I can see it made a request out to models.github.ai. It got a response, and the AI response that it received was cloudy. But I also added a debug logger, right? This is sitting inside here, inside my forecast summarizer, right? When it sent the prompt, I wrote just a standard logger log debug. You know how to do this. And it wrote this message out, and because I added a little bit of OpenTelemetry scoping, it wrapped this all up and recognizes that as one transaction, as one process, so that they're all grouped together, and I can see exactly what's going on here, and it's coupled right next to, there's the response it received. Okay? So now we've got diagnostic interaction coming back that goes across services, that's logged in a standard way. I can see the traces that go across all of these capabilities, all of these resources, and comes back into one location. And I've got metrics now that I've added that are going to show me how I've used the AI. So I've got my weather forecast summarizer here, and I can see how long that request took to go to GitHub. But wait, there's more. I also used Copilot to generate another entry here that shows me how many tokens I've used connecting out to GitHub AI. And I can see I've used 158. If I go and find another location here, it doesn't matter which one I choose. It's going to do the search. And this one comes up rainy, so we get a rainy background there. And if I go back here and come on, show me that update. Come on. Am I getting that hidden for me because of the graph? I think I am. In my request duration, I know you hit it. There we go. There's the 2 requests. And the number of token used, it's going to slowly grow that ramp there. And I've got some tags that show me I can filter by the various weather conditions. This is great. This gives me a lot of insight, and my graph, once again, is growing, and I can see my website is connecting out to the AI model, and that GitHub API key that I need to configure is managed out here and sets up my AI model. Okay, I didn't show that part, but I'm running out of time here. I gotta get to the end here and stick the landing. The next demo that's part of this is, and actually I grabbed the wrong one here. 1 second. It is, no, we're not moving anything. What are you doing here? Yeah, this one. So I know there's a number of popular locations that I could run in the background and cache data for and put it into memory for my application. So let's do that. Let's go get some of our popular zones like Washington, D.C., New York, and Philadelphia, because those are large cities that folks are probably going to search for. And I wrote a background service. You see, this is a background service that is going to wake up and every 15 minutes, go get those locations, and I'm doing a bunch of logging and statistics here, and put them into memory. So there it's setting inside of memory cache for 15 minutes, here's the forecast for this location. So when I was looking at the trace for connecting out to Philadelphia, it was actually only looking in memory. It was caching it. It was already cached. But here you see where it went and got that Alaskan city, and it actually hit the National Weather Service. If I look further at the traces, I can go all the way up here and I can see the cache service running, and I can see that it set information inside of my Redis cache, right? There's a lot going on here. There it is. The forecast cache service is attempting to cache information about the zone New York 72, caching information about the zone DC 001. And here, Pennsylvania 071. And I can see the logs for exactly how it interacts with them to do that caching process. It's all structured, and I've grown this appropriately for me here. And inside my AI here, I've added inside my API metrics, I can see my request durations for interacting with the National Weather Service. I'll zoom back out. And I can also see where is it? I thought I had a cache. No, I didn't add metrics for the cache. So I can see all the count of requests that have gone into the National Weather Service as simple additional metrics that I've added. Here's the thing. I didn't go through and write all of these zone activities and tags. Hey, there we go. We're nearing the end here. I asked Copilot to generate this for me. Go into Copilot and say, I need some additional logging for this that's going to work with .NET Aspire. And it will go and generate additional logs for you because you don't want to write this stuff, but you've got a great framework that's going to capture and present it for you. So let Copilot know it's working with Aspire. It has open telemetry, and it will set up these methods for you and register it for you inside your program CS right there, okay? Fantastic. I don't need to worry about writing, logging, and tracing. I've got a great format that's going to present it, so Skippy and my buddies in operations can go and use that and get data out of it. Let's actually put this application somewhere that Skippy can use it, right? That their team can interact with this. And I can do that with the Azure developer command line, azd init. Let me move that to the top of the terminal. You get the same experience if you're in Visual Studio and you right-click Publish. I'm going to show you this at the command line to give you a little bit more of the insight into the low-level stuff that's going on that folks on the team built into that Visual Studio tool. It actually wraps these capabilities. So hey, you want to initialize an application. Where's your application live? Well, it's in the current directory. So go take a look in the current directory and let's see what we can find there. And AZD is going to come back and say, hey, I found a .NET Aspire app, and it's in the app host project. Yes, I want to build one of those. Let's give it an environment name, and I'll call this the Weather Hub. And now it's generated some script information for me so that I can kick off and go deploy my application. I'm not going to deploy the application right now because the deployment process takes a little bit of time. There's some other folks later on in the event that are going to give you presentations that dive deep into customizing this. But I want to show you this command that comes up next, azd pipeline config. I would normally just run azd up and it would deploy and you'd have an application running on Azure. But I'm going to run azd pipeline config, and it's going to configure my CI pipeline for me. Do you want to deploy using GitHub or Azure DevOps? I'm a GitHub guy, so give me GitHub. It's going to analyze the application. It's going to generate some bicep so that it can deploy to Azure. And hey, which subscription do you want to use? That looks like a good one. Give me a value for the API key for GitHub. The GitHub models need a token so that they know how to connect. You would copy and paste in your secret token here. I'm just going to key in 1, 2, 3, 4 to get through this little demo and show you what it does. Sure, let's put it out to West US. It's going to configure my GitHub pipeline. It generated an action for me here. It's missing from the project. Sure, go ahead, add that now. And I can log into GitHub and push this out for you. Do you want to do that? No, I'm just giving a demo here right now. Let me finish my demo. And I'll go back over to VS Code. Not that VS Code. I had another one here. There we go. Need this just to finish. Not Solution Explorer, show me over here. Now I have .azure and it has my configuration information. And where's the .github file? It didn't write the oh, you know what? It probably put it up a folder, didn't it? Let me go up a folder. Yes, it did. That's fine. So there's my GitHub action written for me so that it knows how to connect and deploy to Azure whenever you go and push to your master or main branch, your primary branch. It's going to configure, because I'm logged in with Azure, the AZD command line, it's going to configure all your authentication information so it can connect into that resource group that I defined. The action's going to check out your source code, make sure AZD is available, set up .NET for you. I'm .NET 9, so I could edit this and have that set up for me. Log into Azure. And then we broke up the deployment into 2 steps. Provision the architecture. So in my case, the Redis cache and the API and the website applications, they're Azure container apps. And then deploy. And this is where it actually does the build, and it will package as a container image and deploy to your own private container registry that's sitting out there on Azure. Really easy to do. There's going to be talks this week that go deeper on this, customizing this and making this do what you need. Okay? But I want to make sure you get the source code, you get some follow-up information about how you can do more with this and take a look into it further. Here's my resources. The source code you can find out on my GitHub, github.com/C#Fritz, Aspire Dev to Deploy. This slide deck is in there. It's not that big a slide deck because really we did all the source code. And the source code is sitting there in different checkpoint folders that you can go through. You can find me 2 days a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I am live coding on YouTube and Twitch from 9 a.m. Eastern to 1 p.m. Eastern, 4 hours each day. It's Developer Talk Radio. We're building stuff live with .NET Aspire and C#. You can drop in, ask questions, tell jokes, have a good time with us. You can find me on the .NET YouTube is where you'll find other videos and training material. But I'm on YouTube.com C#Fritz and Twitch TV C#Fritz. My name is Jeff Fritz. Thank you so much for coming to the session. I hope you have a fantastic VS Live.